Number 5. Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes had everything you'd need to become the next Steve Jobs. Young, charismatic, black turtleneck. Actually, that last one might have been doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Back in the early 2000s, Holmes dropped out of Stanford and started a company called Theranos. The pitch was insane. You know how doctors normally take multiple vials of blood and send them off to a lab full of expensive machines? Well, Holmes claimed her company could do hundreds of tests using just a tiny drop of blood, which, if true, would have been one of the biggest breakthroughs in modern medicine. Investors absolutely lost their minds. At one point, Theranos was valued at around $9 billion. People called Elizabeth Holmes a genius. Magazines put her on covers. Politicians wanted photos with her. Important people nodded very seriously while pretending they understood how blood testing technology worked. Now, at this point in the story, I'd love to tell you that Theranos had a secret underground laboratory powered by alien technology and a team of vampire scientists working around the clock. But that would be made up. The actual truth is somehow less reassuring. The machines just didn't work, like, at all. Theranos was reportedly running many tests on traditional machines while convincing investors, partners, and the public that its own technology could do what it claimed, which is generally considered a red flag in the medical industry. Doctors like accuracy. Patients also tend to enjoy it. As journalists started digging deeper, the whole thing began to collapse. Turns out, building revolutionary medical technology is harder than wearing the same outfit as Steve Jobs and lowering your voice by 2 octaves. Who knew? The company unraveled. Theranos shut down. Its billions vanished. And in 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on multiple counts of fraud. She went from being celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire to becoming one of the most famous corporate fraud cases in modern history, which is a pretty dramatic career pivot. I guess the lesson here is that if someone tells you they've reinvented medicine, and all they can show you is a black box and vibes, maybe ask a few follow-up questions. Number 4. Dennis Kozlowski, Tyco. Dennis Kozlowski was the CEO of Tyco. Tyco wasn't some tiny startup run out of a garage by 3 guys eating instant noodles. It was a massive company. Electronics, healthcare, security systems. Tyco made a ridiculous amount of money, and Dennis was the guy in charge. Now, if you become CEO of a giant corporation, you have 2 options. You can responsibly manage the business, or you can apparently look at the company bank account and think, damn, that's crazy. Anyway, prosecutors said Kozlowski and another executive took hundreds of millions of dollars through unauthorized bonuses and questionable loans, which sounds very technical, but some of the spending was less technical. At one point, Tyco paid for a birthday party for his wife in Sardinia. This wasn't just dinner and a cake from the grocery store. This thing reportedly cost around $2 million. There was an ice sculpture of Michelangelo's David, which, for reasons known only to God, dispensed vodka from its penis. I'm not making that up. And honestly, if I were making things up, I'd probably choose something less specific. Imagine being the accountant. You open the expense report. You see luxury decor, entertainment, imported everything, giant vodka statue. And somehow your job is to classify that under business expenses. In 2005, Kozlowski was convicted on multiple charges, including grand larceny and securities fraud. He was sentenced to prison, which had significantly fewer ice sculptures. The weird part is that Tyco itself was a real company. It made real products. It employed real people. Dennis had already won. He was rich, successful, respected, and then he kept going, which might be the unofficial slogan of half the people on this list. I already have more money than I'll ever spend, but let's see what happens if I get weird with it. Number 3. Bernie Ebbers, WorldCom. Bernie Ebbers became the CEO of one of the biggest telecom companies in America, despite looking like a man who should be teaching you how to bait a fishing hook. Nothing against fishermen. It's just that if you showed me a picture of Bernie in the 90s and asked me what he did for a living, runs a company worth tens of billions of dollars, would not crack the top 50. Anyway, WorldCom was huge. The internet boom was happening. Everyone was making money. Investors were happy. Analysts were happy. The media was happy. Basically, if you had a company and knew how to pronounce the word bandwidth, people would throw money at you. Then the market slowed down, which was unfortunate, because Wall Street has this weird personality trait where they expect companies to continue making money forever, every quarter, until the heat death of the universe. And WorldCom had a problem. The numbers weren't looking so good. Now, if this happened to me, I would panic. If this happened to you, you'd probably panic. If this happened to Bernie Ebbers and his team, well, according to prosecutors, they looked at billions billions of dollars in expenses and said, "What if we just didn't?" And before the accountants in the audience tackle me to the ground, yes, that's an oversimplification. The actual process involved moving ordinary expenses into capital accounts to make the company appear more profitable, which is accounting language for, look, if we rename the problem, maybe it stops being a problem. It does not. Imagine going to your doctor. He says, "Your cholesterol is high," and you respond, "No, it's not cholesterol. It's future energy." Same concept. For a while it worked. The stock price stayed up. People kept clapping. Nobody wanted to be the guy in the meeting raising his hand like, "Hey, quick question. Are we making all of this up?" Then internal auditors started digging. And here's the thing. Finding one accounting mistake? That happens. Finding a few $1,000,000 out of place? Not ideal. Finding billions? At some point you stop auditing and start rubbing your eyes like a cartoon character. WorldCom had overstated its earnings by billions of dollars. The company collapsed. Thousands of people lost their jobs. Investors got obliterated. And Bernie Ebbers, the business genius, the respected executive, the guy on magazine covers, ended up being convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison, which is a rough LinkedIn update. I think my favorite part of stories like this is that nobody wakes up and says, "You know what? Today I'd like to commit one of the largest accounting frauds in American history." It's usually more like, "We'll fix it next quarter." Then next quarter arrives, and suddenly you're trying to explain to a jury why expenses are apparently just a state of mind. Number 2, Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX. So this guy built one of the biggest crypto exchanges in the world. People gave him billions. Just sit with that for a second. Billions. There's something very funny about the fact that if you ask the average person how much $1 billion is, they genuinely have no idea. $1 billion is, we stop counting and start saying words money, and people handed it over. FTX grew ridiculously fast. Investors loved it. Celebrities promoted it. Politicians met with him. The media loved him. He became the responsible face of crypto, which is interesting, because the responsible face of crypto is a bit like being the healthiest guy at a hot dog eating contest. It's still an achievement. I'm just not sure what standards we're working with. Anyway, the money rolled in, the company got bigger, and the story everyone agreed on was simple. This guy was a genius, and people love geniuses, especially when they're making everyone richer. One thing you'll notice throughout history is that success has an incredible ability to answer questions before they're asked. Does he know what he's doing? Well, he's rich. So, yes? It's only later that people suddenly rediscover curiosity. Then people started asking where the money was, which is one of those questions that's either answered immediately or becomes the only question anyone asks. The answer, according to prosecutors, was not ideal. The details got complicated. The headlines got worse. The confidence disappeared. And one of my favorite things in stories like this is watching everyone perform the world's fastest emotional U-turn. The same people going, "This changes everything," became, "I always had concerns." No, you didn't. You had concerns in the same way people have concerns about skydiving after they've already hit the ground. FTX collapsed. Billions vanished. Customers panicked. And the guy who was supposed to bring legitimacy to crypto ended up in court, which feels almost poetic, because every bubble eventually reaches the same phase. At first, you just don't get it. Then, nobody could have seen this coming, even though somehow somebody always does. And I think that's my favorite part. Not the money, not the collapse. It's how normal it all is. Nobody wakes up thinking, "Today I'm going to become a cautionary tale." It usually starts with, "We'll figure it out later." Humanity has been using that strategy for thousands of years. Sometimes it leads to the moon landing. Sometimes it leads to federal prison. It's a versatile approach. Number 1, Carlos Ghosn. Carlos Ghosn spent years fixing car companies. Then he escaped Japan in a box. That's the story. Everything else is just details. Before all the arrests and international headlines, Ghosn was basically the guy companies called when things were going badly. Nissan was in trouble. Ghosn came in, cut costs, closed factories, fired people. The company survived. Some people thought he was ruthless. Other people thought he was brilliant. Usually those are the same people 6 months apart. Over time, Ghosn became one of the most powerful executives in the car industry. Then, in 2018, he landed in Japan and got arrested. The allegation was that he'd underreported compensation and used company money in ways prosecutors weren't particularly enthusiastic about. Now, most corporate crime stories become extremely boring at this point. Lawyers appear, documents appear, meetings happen. Everyone starts using words like governance. This story takes a different route, because while prosecutors were building their case, Carlos Ghosn was apparently working on on a separate project, leaving. Japan wasn't especially interested in that plan, which created a problem. Gon was under supervision. His movements were restricted. People were watching him. The story should have ended there. Instead, it somehow got stranger. According to reports, a team helped move him out of Japan, hidden inside a large equipment case used for audio gear. Not metaphorically, not hidden in plain sight. An actual case, the kind of thing you'd expect to contain speakers. At some point, somebody looked at one of the most recognizable business executives on Earth and said, "What if we shipped him?" And then they did. They put him in a box. They got him out of the country. The plan worked.